Hello, developers. So, whenever you create a React Native application for the first time, the very first step is to set up the environment for React Native on your operating system. Whether you're using Windows OS, Mac OS, or Linux, the initial steps are the same. You need to set up the environment first. Once the environment is ready, you can create your application, start development, build the app, and do everything else. Now, the steps we'll follow for setting up the environment will be strictly based on the official documentation. The reason for this is twofold. 1. We will install React Native in the official way. 2. In case you encounter any issues, which might happen in 1-2% of cases, you can easily resolve them by referring to the official documentation. Alright, let me briefly outline the steps for you before we dive into installing everything step by step with the official documentation. First, we need to install Chocolatey, also called Choco, Node.js, and JDK, Java Development Kit. After that, we'll install Android Studio, download the SDK and the emulator. If you're not familiar with what these are, don't worry, I'll explain everything at each step. Next, we need to set up the environment for Android Studio. Finally, we'll create our first React Native application and run it. Alright, now let me switch to the official documentation. Oh, by the way, I already have some of these things installed on my system, so when we proceed with the installation, you might see that certain things are already installed. But don't worry, you'll still understand the steps you need to follow. Look, if I install everything step by step while uploading the video, it'll become a very long video. That's why some things are already installed on my system, and I'll show you how to install the rest during the video. Now, if any errors pop up during this video, I won't cut them out. I'll show you the errors so that if you encounter the same issues, you'll know how to resolve them. Don't think I haven't prepared the video if errors show up. Even if I wanted, I could have removed those errors during editing. But my goal is for you to see and understand how to resolve those problems if they occur on your system. Alright, now let's click on Get Started. You'll see there are two methods to proceed. One is with ExpoGo, Quick Start. But the issue here is that you'll always need your phone connected to Wi-Fi, and the app will run on the phone while you work on your system. It's not very convenient and feels a bit weird. So, we'll go with the React Native CLI instead. Now look, they have provided steps for all three operating systems, Mac OS, Windows, and Linux. For now, we're proceeding with Windows and setting it up for Android. It's important to note that iOS setup is not supported on Windows or Linux. It's only possible on Mac OS. You might wonder, didn't you say React Native allows building apps for both Android and iOS? Yes, absolutely. React Native does support building apps for both platforms. However, the problem is that Windows and Linux systems cannot compile iOS builds. So if you're using Windows or Linux, you can only test Android builds. However, if you run the same code on Mac OS, you can build and test iOS apps without any issues. Alright, moving forward. As per the documentation, we'll need to install Node.js and JDK. It's recommended to install Node via Chocolatey. Here they specifically mention using JDK version 11, as it's the recommended version. Using a higher version might cause errors. Although the chances are low, we'll stick to the official documentation to avoid potential issues and keep things simple for you. This approach ensures that even if you watch this video a year or two later, you can still follow along by referring to the updated documentation. Alright, let's copy the first command. But before that, we'll need to install Chocolatey. The documentation doesn't explain how to do it, but they've provided a link. Go to chocolatey.org, click on Get Started, and you'll find the command there. It's a single command. You just need to run it. Copy it from here. But remember, don't run it in the command line. Run it in PowerShell. Let me open PowerShell for you. Make sure it's not just the normal PowerShell. You need to open it as an administrator. So right-click on PowerShell and select Run as administrator. Once you do that, you'll see Administrator written at the top, which means you're running it with admin privileges. Alright, here's the English version of your request. Once you run the command, copy the required text and paste it as instructed. It will take some time for the installation process to complete. In the meantime, we can talk about other things. After Chocolatey is installed, we'll set up Node.js, LTS version, and open JDK 11. Once these are installed, we'll verify if they were properly set up. To check if Chocolatey is ready, simply type Choco in the terminal. If it displays a version number, everything is working perfectly. Next, on the same command line, you can paste the commands for installing Node.js and OpenJDK. You can type these commands manually, but copying them ensures there are no spelling mistakes and speeds up the process. If these tools are already installed on your system, the terminal will indicate so. Otherwise, the installation will begin. Following a step-by-step process minimizes errors and makes troubleshooting easier if any issue arises. For instance, if you set up Android Studio before other dependencies, you might realize you skipped some steps. A structured approach avoids such mistakes. You could install Node.js and OpenJDK simultaneously with Android Studio, but doing it step-by-step is better. Once Node.js and OpenJDK are installed, open a new command line and type node v. If the version number appears, Node.js is installed. Similarly, type Java version to verify OpenJDK, which should display version 11, 0.17 as expected. Next, download and install Android Studio using the provided link. Close the Chocolatey terminal if you like, click the link, and the download option for Android Studio will appear. Once downloaded, double-click the file to start the installation. The installer will first verify, followed by the usual steps of clicking Next and accepting the terms and conditions. Select the installation path, and the setup will install required dependencies like the Android SDK, platforms, and virtual devices. accept all prompts during this process. Keep in mind, if your system has less than 8 GB of RAM or no SSD, Android Studio might run slowly. However, with SSD storage and 8 GB RAM, it should work fine. After installation, launch Android Studio. You'll see a welcome screen, and the setup will ask if you want to send reports to Google. You can choose not to. The setup process is now complete. We'll simply skip this step for now. If it says the SDK is not found, don't worry. Follow the instructions to install it. Click Next, and it will prompt for installation of Android emulator, build tools, and other requirements. Accept all suggestions. There's no problem with that. After these default dependencies are installed, I'll guide you through additional installations. First, let the default requirements complete. The process might take some time, depending on your internet speed, as the packages are downloaded from the internet. The next time you install Android Studio, if you don't clear the cache, it will reuse the cached data, saving time. Once all default dependencies are installed, click Finish. After finishing, you'll see a More Actions option. From there, you can open the SDK or select other options as needed. Here, it will prompt you to install SDKs like Android SDK 31 for Android 12 and source code for API 31, along with Google API Intel x86 and Intel x86 Atom. If you don't see all details, enable Show All Details to make the options visible. You'll need to download these 4 components. Click the download icons, and I'll show you how it looks afterward. The components include Android SDK Platform 31, Intel x86 System Image, Google APIs. Select them and install. Installing both versions won't harm your setup and might actually be beneficial. Next, go to the SDK Tools section. While version 33 might already be selected by default, add the build tools for version 31 as well. Click Apply. It will confirm the items to install, approximately 2.1 GB. Confirm and proceed with the installation, though it might take some time due to the data download. Once all dependencies are installed, click Apply and then OK. After this, you'll need to configure the Android environment variable, Android_home. To set the environment variable, search for environment variables in Windows. Open the settings, create a new variable named Android_home, and set the path to your SDK directory. If you copy the path directly, ensure there are no trailing spaces. The better approach is to provide the full path manually based on your system's username. For example, navigate to C user sound your username app data while local Android's SDK, copy the path, and set it as the value for Android_home. After completing this setup, confirm it is properly configured. You're all set. Everything related to the home environment variable for Android, whether Android_home is set up or not, let's check again. Open PowerShell. Paste the command we had copied earlier into PowerShell. As soon as you paste it, you will see Android_home. This means the user variable is properly set. Next, you also need to set up the platform. To set up the platform, follow the same method. Go to the SDK folder and locate the Platform Tools folder. Confirm the path for the platform tools. Copy it, and then open the environment variables again. This time, scroll down to the system variables, locate the path variable, and open it. Paste the copied path at the end of the list, or use the new option to add it as a new entry. Click OK, and then OK again. All right, everything is set. Now, let's move on. We have successfully set up the path and related configurations. Next, check whether the SDK you've set up opens correctly or not. Open React Native and navigate to the More options. If the page is already closed, go to the Virtual Device Manager. Here, you may need to download a device again. Click on the Create option. After that, you can choose any option from the list. I will select Resizable Experimental here, and then proceed by clicking Next. On the next screen, you'll be prompted to download some system images. For example, though version 33 is suggested, I want to go with version 31. I'll go back and select a Pixel XL with the S31x86 dependency. You'll notice that this one is already downloaded, whereas others show a download option. Since it's already available, click Next. If you want, you can rename your AVD, Android Virtual Device. After that, simply click Finish. Once done, your new device will appear on the list. If you already had devices added, you'll see multiple devices here. You can delete, wipe data, or duplicate devices as needed. To launch the device, just click Launch this device. One more thing, if you haven't already enabled Hyper-V, you'll need to do that. Check this document for instructions. It will guide you through enabling Hyper-V. In summary, search for Turn Windows, features on or off, locate the Hyper-V option, or anything with a similar name, and check it. If it's unchecked, enable it and click OK. It may take some time to install. After that, close everything. Now, your device should open. Wait for a moment. Yes, here it is. Your device. For the first time, it might take a little longer to boot up. If your system performance is slightly low, expect it to take more time. All right, the Android emulator is up and running. You can also test your applications here. Everything works properly. You can even browse YouTube or perform other tasks without any issues. So far, we've completed 50% of the setup. Any errors we encounter next will require further work to resolve. Now, what you need to do is move on to React Native. If you already have any version of React Native CLI installed on your system, uninstall it. Here's the command for that. Simply open CMD, paste this command, and run it. If there's anything to uninstall, it will be removed. Otherwise, it will tell you that everything is fine. For example, it showed here that nothing was found. All right, I closed it. Now, let's move to our project. Copy the following command, open CMD again, and navigate to any folder where you want to create your project. It could be on the desktop, the C drive, D drive, or wherever you want. For now, I'm working directly in the Aman Maurya users folder. Use this command, npx react native init. Replace with the name of your project. For instance, I'll name it first project here. When you initialize your project for the first time, there's a chance of encountering errors. However, if you followed the steps correctly, there shouldn't be any issues. So let's wait and see. So far, everything is perfect. No errors have occurred, and our application has been initialized successfully. Now, navigate to the folder where your application has been created. You can also directly check in the directory to see where your application is located. In this case, under the Aman Maurya folder, you can see that first app has been created. Next, you need to run the application. I'll also show you the command for that. If you want to install a specific version or use TypeScript, there are other commands for that. But for now, we won't go into those. The default command you need to use is npx react native run Android. Either copy or type this command, navigate to the first project directory, and paste the command npx react native run Android. Now, this is the point where errors are more likely to occur. If there are issues with the path or the environment variables, this is where they'll show up. If any error happens, it's 90% likely to be here. Otherwise, there won't be any issues. So far, everything is running perfectly because we followed the steps correctly. Let's see what happens next. As you can see, it says started daemon here. This reduces the chances of any problems. If you're using macOS or a MacBook, setting up the environment for Android and iOS will have slightly different steps. There's a separate video for that, which will be available in the same playlist. The link to the playlist is in the description box. The build has been created successfully. If you open the emulator now, you'll see the bundling process. It's already at 91% and will take a little more time. After that, your application will appear. To verify everything is working correctly, we'll also make a small change to ensure updates and changes are reflected properly. In the meantime, I'll open this project in VS Code. To do that, I'll run the command in cmd code. As you know, code will open the entire folder in Visual Studio Code. Here, you can see that Welcome to React Native is displayed perfectly. Everything is working fine. Now, if you want to make changes, open the app.js file. For instance, where it says step 1, you can change it to something else, such as hello, or modify anything else you like. If you want to write something, type hello here. As soon as you check, you'll see that hello has been updated, and any changes made here will reflect immediately because of the auto refresh feature. In earlier versions of React Native, auto refresh wasn't available, but now it's a built-in option, making development much more convenient. So that's all for this part. Your React Native has been installed and is working properly. If you're facing any issues, feel free to ask me in the comments section, or you can follow me on Instagram and send a screenshot of the issue you're encountering. All right, thank you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video.